What the Sam Hill's going on here?
The Rewatch Podcast presents the Lois and Clark Rewatch, dedicated to the series Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman on ABC. Join us each week as we investigate the origins of the Man of Steel and uncover crime in Metropolis. Send your feedback to the Rewatch Podcast at gmail.com. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Rewatch Podcast or follow us on Twitter at RewatchPod.
Oh, hey! Let's get back to it.
And welcome back to the Rewatch Podcast and our Lois and Clark Rewatch. I'm Cory.
And I'm Plot Device, and I'll be here several times today.
I love a good plot device, that's for sure. Okay, well, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're here, of course, discussing 2 more episodes of Lois and Clark. And this week's headline reads, Brutal People.
I like it.
Anybody watch Metalocalypse out there? That's what it made me think of. Brutal. Oh my god, they're so brutal.
I've not seen it.
We're discussing Brutal Youth and the People versus Lois Lane. And before we get into it, we know we're stuck in the middle of a 2-parter, people. Sorry.
I know. They fooled us.
What can you do? It's what happens when they do 2-parters in odd sequential of the episode.
Yes.
Is sequential a word? It is now.
We invented it. Word of the year, 2017.
All right. Well, let's get into our first episode discussion today. The episode is Brutal Youth, written by Tim Minear. Minear? I don't know. I'm going to go with Minear.
Yes.
And directed by David Grossman. This originally aired October 20th of 1996.
This is incredible. This tissue sample, it's aging.
It's what?
It's breaking down. Whatever it was sped up this boy's aging process. It's still working.
Do you have any idea what that could be?
This is what is strange. There doesn't seem to have been any foreign agent introduced. It's almost as if his youth was sucked out by some powerful force.
What could do that?
Something noxious, maybe. Intense radiation? A cell disruptor? Whatever it was caused a chain reaction at the molecular level, which brought about accelerated decrepitude. Think of your victim's aging process as, the opposite of Superman's, for instance.
What?
Well, you know how Superman's molecular structure is such that his aging process actually stabilizes and slows? In the case
Hold on. What do you mean? Stabilizes and slows.
What I mean is, it stabilizes and slows.
So are you saying Superman won't age?
No, of course he will. He's not immortal.
Well, so he will age, but just not like you and me?
Well, it's all speculation, you understand. But I think it's safe to say that long after you and I are dead and gone, Superman will still be in his prime, fighting for truth, justice.
The American way.
As Lois and Clark contemplate where to live now that they're married, a case falls into their lap as an old school friend of Jimmy's shows up at the planet. The only problem, however, is he appears decades older and suddenly dies within minutes of old age. Jimmy decides to follow his nose for news and goes undercover at his friend's last job as a pizza delivery boy, and soon finds himself taken captive by a woman named Dr. Dootson, who hooks him up to a machine and seemingly drains his body's life force out of him and into an older man also hooked up to the machine, a man who broke out of prison recently named Connor Shank. While it seems like Connor has become young again, the effect wears off because plutonium is the key missing ingredient in Dr. Dootson's process. Connor decides to rob a bank to get enough money for plutonium, while Lois and Clark's investigations lead them to Dootson, who at one time worked in the field of geriology, but after performing tests on human subjects in prison, she was disgraced and let go from her university. Dootson gets nervous and wants to stop the experiments, but Connor forces her to continue, deciding that Superman's body will have enough life force to make him young again permanently. Meanwhile, Jimmy has cracked a case discovering Connor's plan, but has in the meantime succumbed to the effects of Dutzen's machine, causing him to age rapidly. Dutzen calls and says she will save Jimmy if Superman agrees to give up some of his life force to make Connor, who has become old again, young once more. Superman agrees and the transfer begins, but goes awry due to the sheer power of his life force, causing Connor to revert to a baby. Lois rushes in and stops Dutzen from escaping, making sure she performs the transfer on Jimmy, restoring his youth and saving the day.
Lois, honey, she didn't upset you with her spew, did she?
You heard all that? What am I saying? Of course you heard all that. You hear everything. You see everything. It's like being married to St. Nick.
She's a bitter woman. She doesn't know us. I love you, and we are going to grow old together.
No. No, we are not going to grow old together. I am going to grow old. Alone.
Honey, what is this all about? Come on, we're supposed to be able to tell each other everything.
Yeah. So why didn't you tell me about your molecular structure?
My what?
It probably doesn't mean that much to you because you know, fly and everything. But I get very emotional about my mortality. And I know how that sounds, and it's not vanity. I don't mind growing old, honestly. I just don't want to wake up one morning and find out that you and I have been separated by time.
Lois, I have no idea what you're talking about.
You don't, do you? Dr. Klein told me that your molecular structure slows the aging process. So someday, I'll be an old crone, and you'll still be Superman.
Alright, so we have a fair bit here in the investigation.
Yes, we do. And of course, as always, these bits come from iReactions, going through the original scripts that he finds online and comparing it to what actually aired. So we start off here with Jimmy. He actually wasn't supposed to help Benny to a seat or get him a drink. It wasn't in the script. It's just something that they added in at the last minute. And Benny has a line that they cut out, I guess, that he was going to say to Jimmy, hey, you know, you're right. She is a babe. And he looks over to Lois, you know, as an old guy, of course. He looks over to Lois. Thought that was kind of neat that Jimmy has this crush on Lois, you know.
I was kind of hoping that there'd be a line like, I'm dying, man.
Well, there you go. The script said that Superman was supposed to exhale the gas that he inhaled above the clouds, but in the aired version, you can see he's clearly below. You know, you can see the city pretty close by, but I don't know, maybe for effect reasons, whatever. And that goes right on to the next thing. When he was repairing the wall, he put a couple bricks back into the wall, but he was actually, in the script, supposed to repair the wall completely. And I was thinking sort of like Superman did in the Superman movie with the Great Wall of China, and he sort of repaired it, you know. I think they were going to do that, but again, maybe there wasn't enough money to actually do that effect. So he just put a couple bricks back. Hey, you guys get the rest.
Well, it's convenient that the explosion didn't destroy any bricks, just forced them out of where they were, and then they all fit perfectly back where they were.
Exactly. That's how it works. That's how explosions work, you know. Anyway, so Dr. Klein was talking to Lois, and he's, you know, like, she's like, what could do this, you know? And he says, you know, well, something noxious, you know, maybe intense radiation, a cell disruptor. And then he goes into this, you know, he goes over to this other device and starts talking. The original line was supposed to be, well, something noxious, maybe intense radiation, a cell disruptor, any Patrick Swayze movie. They cut that out. I was like, that's funny. That's funny. I don't know. I don't know why they cut it out. He was still alive back then. It would have been funny, you know. Now it's not right, but back then it would have been great.
Maybe not so much Patrick Swayze movies. Maybe Don Swayze movies.
There you go. Yeah, maybe that's what he should have said. Yeah. And then he explains a little bit more, and Lois had a line that said, you know, I'm sorry, Dr. Klein, I don't have my mad scientist English dictionary with me. So just a couple good lines there that they cut out, which were funny.
I like it.
Maybe because they're trying to keep the seriousness of this, you know, obviously, as we'll get into the whole issue. So maybe they didn't want to throw some comedy in at that point. Clark says to Lois, they're at his place and they're discussing Benny's death, and he comes out and he's like, this is exactly how I dreamed married life would be. I'd wake to the smell of freshly brewed coffee, and there'd be my beautiful bride, reading the morning coroner's report. I guess that's something very us about that. That's a good, again, it's a very funny line. It's very good, and it's true. That is them.
Yeah.
That kind of is their life. Not reading the morning paper, reading the morning coroner's report. But again, I'm wondering, maybe they just didn't want to go the whole comedic route because they were trying to get another feeling through in this episode. So probably a good choice to take that out. But in the end, I like that. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
When Dutzen's windows open by themselves, when Superman goes by, to drop Jimmy off, that wasn't in the script. The windows just opened by themselves. And again, I don't know how that would happen except plot device. Anyway, so Lois comes into the apartment, and she was supposed to grab Dutzen, and she's like all ready to punch her, but Superman calls out and says, "No, we need her." Of course, in the aired version, Superman doesn't say anything. It's all just up to Lois to decide what to do there. And then finally we have Perry at the very end, which was nice if they had put this in here. Glad you're feeling better, Jimmy, that whole thing, and he assigns Jimmy to, go cover this Metropolis 10K race and find me a human interest story. So he gives him an assignment, which is nice. I wish they had left that in there because that'd be nice to have heard.
Yeah, it's still a bit of progression for the character after all he goes through in this episode.
I was right.
Clark, what are we doing here?
I just had this vision of how you would look standing in the light from this window. I had to see.
Are you okay? What did Dr. Klein say?
Jimmy is gonna be fine.
I know that. What else did he tell you?
Connor Shank is already going through the terrible twos. Dr. Klein thinks he'll be back to his old self by next week.
What did Dr. Klein say about you?
Apparently, my body has already compensated for whatever age drain there was.
Compensated? Then you have lost something.
My friend is healthy. I'm sitting here with my wife. I haven't lost anything.
You gave up years.
I gave them up for a friend.
How many?
I don't know. The truth is, no one knows how long they've got. Anyway, it's not the years that count. It's the moments. Right now. As they happen.
Alright, so let's get into our main story. And this week's lead, Deadly Doctor Dealings. Alright, so we left Lois and Clark going into their marital bed.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't pick up in the marital bed, we pick up on the marital ceiling for some reason.
Yeah.
What's this all about?
Well, it was just, you know what? Basically, this is something that came up in the back issues, like you have here in the notes, and like they came to the conclusion back then. It just looked good. It looks good. That's it.
I don't know about
No
that.
other reason.
He's not holding on to her. She's just lying there. The sheets aren't falling off them.
Nope.
It actually has one of my favorite things that only exists in TV and movies, and that's L-shaped sheets.
Oh, yeah.
They go up
Yes.
to the shoulders of the woman, but only to the waist of the man.
I've seen those before many times. I looked for those at Walmart. They did not have those.
Yeah. Hard to find.
Yes.
But yeah, ridiculous. I was, from the get-go, I'm like, seriously? On the roof? Whatever.
Hey, it's Superman. No, there's more discussion about this. In the back issues, we'll talk more about this, about what their theories were for this. So we'll get to that.
They're all over each other when they
Yes.
go back to work. Like, Lois cannot restrain herself. Like, they are totally in love with each other. But,
Right.
of course, they're back at work, so back to it. Story pretty much just runs on into the Daily Planet. This old guy, he apparently knows Jimmy, straight up dies right there in front of everyone. And he is actually an old school pal of Benny, who conveniently has a scar on his head, so Jimmy knows who he is, yeah. Jimmy's like, he's super excited about having this byline that he did about the library extending hours or something.
Right.
So he wants in on the story, and Perry's like, no, you can't do it. It's too personal for you. You can't get in on the story, right? So this is, you know, a whole big setup, right? Something's going on. Young people getting old, and Lois and Clark are going to look into it.
Now, when we were after we finished the last week, we did our predictions for what this episode was going to be, and we pretty much nailed it. Right. We pretty much nailed it. But here's the thing. I didn't want to say it last week because I thought, no, that's not that one. Because I was thinking, isn't this the episode where someone like takes the youth, you know, and then gets young themselves? And I was like, no, that's not from this. I'm thinking of Smallville. That happened in Smallville season 1. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, it did happen in Lois and Clark. They've kind of recycled this plot into Smallville. Do you remember that episode?
I do remember that episode. Well, this one's got a bit of everything, though. Because you got the people taking the youth and getting young. Yeah. But then you got the young people getting old. So, you know, bit of a mixed bag, but I like it.
Yeah.
Superman is needed over at Metropolis Prison for a prison break. And Clark goes, hey, this is the first time you-know-who has sort of broken us apart since we've been married. Yep. Superman has not been needed in Metropolis for 2 whole weeks.
They've been very good in Metropolis. They've been on their best behavior.
Just to cater for Lois and Clark's honeymoon.
Exactly. Yeah, that was another thing that came up in the back issues. People were like, isn't anybody asking, like, where the Sam Hill of Superman? You know, it's like, all this time, where is he? You know,
crime has peaked. Everyone knows that Superman's not around.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, it was something that came up then, too. You know, you just got to go with it. You know, it's like, come on. Even he deserves some time off.
It's like you were saying, plot device.
Exactly.
But you know that this prison break is involved somehow because the guy who was broken out had been in prison for like 50 years. Superman doesn't even know who he is. They're like, oh, you know, Connor Shank escaped. And he's like, who? And it turns out that he was broken out by this scientist named Vida Dutzen.
Yes.
Who is using him because he apparently, there's like a legend that he had like heaps of money stashed away from when he robbed banks in the 20s or something.
Exactly.
I have to point out here, is it Dutzen or Dudesen? Because I found variations all over the place.
Yeah, when I looked up on, because I didn't know what it was either, so I looked up on IMDb, and it was the Dutzen with the Duetsen spelling.
Yeah, well, on the DVD subtitles, it's Dudesen, Doodsen.
Right.
So, right. I don't know. Why is it getting crossed all over the place on this character?
I know. Even the first name is weird, because it's Vita.
Yeah.
Or Vida. It's either one.
Weird. So she has been like luring pizza guys to her apartment and using them in her experiment to give old people youth, but it doesn't last. And like that's her whole plan, is that she wants the money to get plutonium, a very Back to the Future plot here.
Yes, very much. That's what I was thinking.
Like equal out the life force or something. I don't know. She kind of gives it short shrift, but...
Can you just buy plutonium? Is that something you could just buy?
No, you have to track down some Libyans. You gotta find the Libyans first, then you get the
that's
plutonium.
Right. That's right. I forgot about that. She has ties to Doc Brown. She'll get their number. Don't worry.
Yeah.
It just seemed odd. Like, yeah, I need money to buy plutonium, so I will take this prisoner and help him get young so I can get money to buy the plutonium. All right.
Yeah. So, of course, Lois and Clark, they're investigating. They find out about the cells being overaged or like they're still aging. Like they look at Benny's blood work and stuff.
Right.
So they're pretty much into it pretty quickly. And this is where she's meeting with Dr. Klein. And Dr. Klein just drops this bit of info that Superman's cells have sort of like stabilized. So he's not really going to age like regular people. He'll be young for, you know, a good long time. Like he'll be in his peak for like well after they're all dead.
You know, that follows like that's pretty much in line with the comics, because many times they do like a view into the future, you know, issues in the future, and he's still alive and going while everyone has passed on, basically. So yeah, it's that's That is true about him, how he doesn't age like a normal person.
It doesn't make me think, like, that would make for a really interesting TV show. Like Superman in, like, 2075 or something like that. Like, Space Age Superman. Like, no Lois anymore. Like, Lois would have been long dead or something like that. And just, like crazy weird adventures of Superman in the future.
You know, you think that they would have done that by now, because that is a really good idea, because then you're not saddled by the continuity of all the years of comics and everything. You can sort of do your own thing and call back to that old stuff as much as you want.
Yeah, like, you could intermix, like, lessons he learned from the past, like when he knew Jimmy and Lois and everybody, and how that applies to his mission in the future.
Yeah. Huh. You know what? Maybe we should go to Hollywood.
I know.
No one take this idea. It's copyright. 2017 Rewatch Podcast.
So, yeah. I don't know. It's a cool idea. What I don't get is why Klein has never mentioned this to Superman.
Right. Well, maybe, like, I mean, Klein is very smart, obviously, but he's kind of absent-minded a little bit. He's a little bit goofy. Maybe he just figured that Superman knew this. Maybe he just knows this about him, because that's my viewpoint anyway. I think that he thinks that Superman just knows this type of thing. I don't think that they've told Klein that Superman is Clark Kent. He doesn't know that he was raised as a human. He just assumes that Superman is Superman. He's an alien. He knows his powers are this, and this is what he can do. And he probably just assumes that Superman knows all about himself,
You make a compelling point. I'll roll with it. But that's kind of Lois's overarching thing in this episode, is that, they're newly married, and Clark's like, hey, we're going to get placed, and we'll grow old together. And she thinks that he knows that he's not going to grow old. And she keeps having flashes of herself as an old woman and stuff like that. And this really irks her, which I think it would. But when it gets down to it, when she finally says to Clark, like, we're not going to grow old together. Like, you're always going to be Superman. And he gets that information. I mean, I think that's really good. Like, the best part of this episode.
You could tell, like, he's definitely evolved as an actor. And when he gets that information, you could see in his face that he's just realized that he's not going to grow old with her forever, and it kills him, really hurts him.
Now, do you think what happens here is like the answer to this problem? Like, they've issued this issue that Clark is going to be young for a very long time. We get Jimmy put in peril. He poses as a pizza man, and they use him to make Shank young again. And the fact that Superman's going to have to give up some of his life force to save Jimmy. And he also gives up some to Shank as well, turn him into a baby later. Is that like their solution to sort of say, okay, yeah, he did have a long life, but maybe now he won't?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And iReaction said the same thing when he sent his emails about it. That was probably, what they were thinking of. And that, while Superman doesn't age, Dean Cain does, he's a human. So, depending on how long the show would go on, maybe they were thinking this might be a good way to explain away, any differences between this season and the first season. Because you could tell a difference between the way they look from first season to this fourth season, definitely. So, maybe that was a way of trying to get by that. Because I know when Star Trek was on, there was a definite change in Kirk from the first episode to the third season last episode with his tight-fitting uniforms. It was, from what I understand, they shrunk in the wash, but things happen over the course of many years.
So I think we're in agreement. So before it was a certainty that he was going to be young for a long time.
Right.
But now it's more ambiguous. Maybe not a certainty that he's going to age the same as a human now, but it's at least a bit more ambiguous. So you can hold out hope that Lois and Clark might grow old together.
Yes.
Not that you want to see Superman grow old and die, but, I mean, come on.
No.
Whatever, It's a happy medium.
Exactly.
All right. So, of course, Lois and Clark, they get closer to Dootson because of the stomach contents of Benny. They thought it was maybe hospital food, but Perry has this off-the-cuff line about an old folks' home, and she's like, old folks' homes, and that leads them to Dootson, who personally subsidizes an old folks' home. Really, it's just a ploy so she can, take these people that she's made old and sort of dump them in a place.
Exactly.
And they're just there, and nobody asks any questions.
Mm-hmm.
And she's also not a murderer. But you know what she does have? Secret compartment in her apartment.
Yes, she does. Pretty cool.
Everybody's got secret compartments now.
Exactly.
Every bad guy. I'm convinced of it. Every bad guy we're going to see from here until the end of season 4 will have a secret compartment somewhere in their home or office.
I think so.
But her whole thing really is that she's jilted. Her husband left her for a younger woman, so she's like dedicated her life to learning how to be young. And she hasn't used it herself because of the whole plutonium thing. She hasn't like got it perfect or anything. And it turns out that Shank doesn't even have any money stashed away. He's like, yeah, I'll take you to the money. It's there in the bank that I'm going to go and rob right now.
Exactly.
Which I thought was a pretty cool, like, bait and switch kind of thing.
Right.
You know, he goes in there and locks himself in the vault. Then he gets out because he grows old again.
The thing is, though, how did he know he was going to get that old in that exact moment? Maybe he felt it or something. But yeah, I mean, that was pretty risky to know if you're going to change at that moment.
Yeah, exactly. Now, are any of these special guests anybody? The guy who played young Shank looked very familiar.
First, I will say that I knew Shank. I knew young Shank from Quantum Leap. But we know him because back in Sliders, Maggie ended up sliding into some type of virtual reality place, and he was the general.
The general
in charge.
guy, right? Yeah. He's like, yeah, you're back on Earth Prime, and this is like Cro-Mag Central.
Exactly. We won, we just need your help, man.
I knew that guy.
Yep, that's him. When he showed up, I was pleased because like I said, I haven't seen him in many things. I just, knew him from Quantum Leap, and now I know him from here and from Sliders. I like him. I've always liked him in Quantum Leap, so it's nice to see him in these other things around the same time.
Nice. All right, so it keeps going forward. Jimmy's back at work. There's like this convenient thing about not having memory because he escapes and he doesn't quite remember what happened to him. Mm-hmm. And he rapidly grows old. But before he really like loses it, he actually puts the story together.
He does, yep.
He's the one who says like Shank and the young guy and everything, like they're all connected. They're all the same person and blah, blah, blah. But then, he grows really old. I really like the actor playing old Jimmy. I thought that guy did a really good job.
He did. Now I was going to talk about that in the bylines, but we could talk about it here since you bring it up.
Cool.
I'm watching it, and I'm like, and I don't know how. I don't know how I missed this when I first watched it back. When it first aired. I'm just more observant now, I guess. So I'm watching it, and I'm like, man, it looks so familiar to me. And I started thinking about it, I'm like, is that? No, is it really? I look it up, IMDb. And it was. I was like, oh my God. That actor, his name, Jack Larson. His famous role, the 1950s Jimmy Olsen in the old George Reeves Superman show.
Oh, wow.
What a get, I mean, that was just perfect that they got, the Jimmy Olsen, the original Jimmy Olsen, to play old Jimmy Olsen in the new series. I thought that was great.
That is amazing. I love it. Did Jimmy Olsen used to call Clark CK and everything back in those days?
No, back then he used to call him Mr. Kent.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, it was always because it was 1950s. It was like always Mr. Kent, Miss Lane. Because he was supposed to be the young guy.
Yeah.
So I don't think I ever heard him say Clark or Lois. I think it was always Mr. Kent and Miss Lane. And Mr. White or Chief, of course. But yeah, it was always Mr. or Mrs. So yeah, no, I don't remember him saying CK at all.
But yeah, no, I thought he did a great job. He sort of got the mannerisms, but still sort of, had that old guy inflection about it too. And
yeah, see, and I can't remember that I didn't catch it in Superman Returns with Brandon Routh. He is also in that movie as well, and I caught it then. It's when he's the bartender and he's talking. I forget who he's talking to. He might be even talking to Clark. In the bar, Jack Larson plays the bartender. So he was also in that, and that's when I saw that I was like, oh yeah, that's him. That's old Jimmy.
That's pretty much the end of it. He saves the day. Lois and Clark actually decide that they're gonna buy Vita Dudeson's house or her apartment because it has a secret compartment in there, and not many old places have like a secret compartment, so
exactly, why not?
No, I really like this scene too when Lois says like, yeah, I like this place, but is it you? And he says, no, it's not me, it's us. And I'm like,
yeah, that was good.
Oh, they're lovely.
That was good. Yeah, it was good. It was good. I like it.
But this episode actually had a lot about that, you know, like getting into the bylines, like when they're in the apartment. They're in Clark's apartment, right? So,
Yes.
yeah, I'm pretty sure Lois has given up her place. But just like all the stuff.
Did you notice the stuff at all?
I noticed the fish tank, because she always had the fish tank, but that was about it.
Fish tank is fine, all right? I took a screenshot, okay? Now, again, we record these ahead of time, so I just got to remember to post it up. But I took a screenshot of that scene where they show all the stuff that has been moved into their apartment and into Clark's apartment. Now, just looking at it right now, two things stand out to me. One, you've got this huge harp in the background. A harp. Like, it's like, you know, a tall harp in the background. Why? I mean, why is there a harp there? I mean, if that's not a harp, it must be like a very elaborate bed frame or something. I have no idea what that is. So yeah, there's a harp. And then to the right of that, there is a huge, it looks like a glass tube. It looks like a huge glass tube, like that you could fit someone in, and it's laying on its side. And it looks like there's something inside of it in the glass, like just laying there. And like you could tell there's like a metal box underneath. Like, I don't know what that is. I have no idea why Clark or Lois would have this thing. It looks like one of those things that like an evil scientist might have to place the heroine in, you know, while she's waiting to be rescued. It's like this big glass test tube, but it's on its side. I have no idea.
Maybe they just like raided the props closet just
That's
to
what
fill
I'm
out and say they just grab whatever, we'll throw it in the apartment.
There's also a red phone in this scene too. Right above it is a red phone. I was thinking, oh, it's the bat phone. It's there. I don't know. It's very strange, some of the things that they had in there. I'm like, all right. So I just got to remember to post that up when this episode goes up. And maybe other people have some ideas about what that is.
Well, you know, we talked about old Jimmy. What about old Lois?
Okay, now, I thought this was cool. I like the whole old Lois thing. I think this was a good, this is definitely a good, like, byline, a good second theme to have in here. You know, because we have the whole old turning to young and, you know, that whole thing and recapturing your youth. But this whole thing of Lois's, where she's trying to deal with this information she has that she's going to grow old and Clark isn't, I thought was great. You know, such a good, nice, you know, something for her to, like, really dig into as an actress, Terry Hatcher. The only thing I didn't like was, and it's so minor, but it could have just pushed it above for me. Whenever she looks in the mirror and sees old Lois, all right, or when she's hugging him and she sees this old woman off to the side who still looks like old Lois from earlier, you know, but is just in her mind, especially when she looks in the mirror, I wish that they had placed that old woman in the same clothes Lois was wearing.
Right.
All right. I know it's minor, but like when she looks in the mirror and sees herself as old, she's wearing like, you know, this frilly, like flowery floral print thing that I guess, you know, typically you see older, you know, people wearing, you know, when they're in the, you know, in the old folks' homes and things like that. I just thought, you know, why not just like it? She's just wearing like this simple, you know, pantsuit or whatever. You could have put the old lady in that, and it would have just given more impact to that moment, you know. Like, just for me, you know, here she is in her pantsuit, and she's young. She looks in the mirror, and there she is again, looking in the same outfit, but now she's old, you know, much older than she is now. I thought that would have been a nice little, you know, thing to put in there, and it shouldn't have cost much to do that. But I don't know. For some reason, they went with, well, let's just put her in clothes that old people would wear.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but that lady, she didn't have much to do. Like, she didn't say anything throughout the episode, but
no,
she had a lot of character in her face, didn't she?
She did. Yeah, she was very good.
When Superman comes in with that cake that's, like, on fire because it's got, like, 300 candles on it.
Yes.
Like, she's, like, genuinely excited by that.
Yeah, no, she was definitely a good actress.
Perry brings up Alice in this episode. And their honeymoon in Graceland. God, that was awkward.
That was very awkward. It's like,
wow.
Geez, Barry, they just got married. Give him a break.
Yeah, our honeymoon in Graceland. I remember that. We all know how that turned out. Jeez, downer.
I know. Exactly. I mean, gosh, he's like the wedding destroyer part two, you know? Like, you guys will get divorced. Don't worry. You'll see. If it happened to me, it could happen to you.
They do bring up that redhead again. Jimmy's date.
Yeah, they do.
I love that. Where he's like, I don't think we're soulmates or anything, but, whatever.
Right.
And Clark's like, I don't know. I think you should try it out. And Jimmy's just like, really think so? All right.
Yeah. I think we can both agree it's not going to go anywhere. It doesn't matter. They're not going to bring her back, that actress.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. All right, well, let's get into this week's quote, right, hey?
What's everybody standing around for? This is a newspaper, not happy hour at Buckingham Palace. What are we here, the Daily Planet? Or second stringers from the Weehawken Gazette?
Am I making myself perfectly clear?
All right, no votes this week. Disappointed.
Oh.
Nada. We got nada out there. What's going on, people? Jeez, come and vote. You end up with Trump if you don't vote. Come on.
Exactly. This is what happens. You didn't vote, and now look what happened. Oh.
So I had to make executive decisions, so if you don't like it, well, you can only blame yourselves out there. Cue the music.
Vincent Price and Kermit the Frog are worried about Sean Connery when he stumbles into the office.
Sean, where in the Sam Hill have you been?
I'm not sure.
Sean, you all right?
Yeah, I'm fine, KTF. I seem to recall a woman, tall and rubber gloves.
That's probably more information than we need to know. Everybody deals with grief in their own way.
She made me see lights.
I'm sure she did, but you don't need to tell me, I was young once. In fact, I'm not anywhere near ready for the old folks' home. Yay.
And scene. That was not my best Sean Connery because the KTF, I was like, what the? Oh, I get it. Because I didn't look ahead at this at all, so I wasn't even sure what voices I was doing. I was like, oh, okay, I get KTF instead of CK. Nice.
Thank you. Well, let's get into our second episode discussion. The episode is titled The People vs. Lois Lane. Written by Grant Rosenberg, directed by Robert Ginty, and this originally aired October 27th of 1996.
Miss Lane, why'd you kill him? Why'd you do it? Lois, how about a statement? Why'd you do it?
Clark, thank God.
Why did you do it? Make a statement.
It was so awful. One moment Sykes was reenacting Zabrinsky's murder, and then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened. The gun just went off. I mean, by itself. I didn't even touch the trigger.
It's okay, honey. We'll get through this. Don't worry.
Mr. District Attorney, can we make a statement?
What's the DA doing here?
The DA's here because he takes murder very seriously, Mr. Kemp.
Murder? There wasn't even a clip in the gun.
This is ridiculous. She's innocent, and you know it.
Do I? She's got gunpowder burns on her hand and a dubious history with the victim. That's enough to hold her over for questioning. Now, if you'll excuse me.
This is my wife we're talking about here. I'm warning you, do not try and turn this into some kind of campaign stunt.
I suggest you keep your emotions in check, Mr. Kemp. You obviously have no idea who you're dealing with here.
Yeah, neither do you.
Lois finds herself framed by a man named the Professor for the murder of an informant named Sykes when a gun he had goes off while Lois was holding it. Adding to her trouble is that the incident was filmed by a bystander, incriminating her further. Lois is arrested and jailed, but Superman pays her a visit and offers to break her out if things get too hard. But she appeals to his sense of justice and that following the law he always upholds is the best way. Superman, arguing that Lois is the best person to discover the truth about this crime, appeals to the district attorney to allow her to be released with the promise that she will not flee the city. Together, they find the shell casing from the gun and send it to be analyzed. But in the meantime, the professor and a student named Walcott have created a hallucinatory hologram of Lois holding a gun and threatening the woman who had videotaped the shooting. Lois is once again taken into custody, and as her trial begins, things go from bad to worse, as Superman can't logically explain the hallucination that everyone saw of the gun-bearing Lois. Following his testimony, a hologram of Perry takes the stand, given that the real Perry was kidnapped by Walcott. The hologram states that Lois had it in for Sykes and wanted revenge, and we are left facing the worst three words in the television language: to be continued.
Still losing, aren't I?
Not as bad as before putting Lois Lane behind bars.
Really?
Listen, the only profession voters hate worse than politicians is reporters. You get a conviction on her, and they'll forget all about those 3 high-profile cases you blew.
What if she's innocent?
We can't afford for her to be.
Ah! Superman, what a surprise.
Mr. District Attorney? Oh, I hope you don't mind. I've taken the liberty of inviting the press.
I'm afraid I don't...
Smile, damn it. Straighten your tie.
Folks, thanks for coming on such short notice. I just wanted to announce that I have decided to help Mr. Clemens with his investigation into the Sykes case.
That's great, Superman. Why?
Because I want to get to the truth as badly as you do. You do want to get to the truth, don't you?
Of course, Superman. Absolutely. After all, just like you, I stand for truth, justice, and the American way. Whatever you need, big fella, just name it.
I need Lois Lane.
You got it.
You want the truth, and she's the best I know at uncovering it. Plus, in this case, I'd say she has a little bit of added incentive. I'd consider it a personal favor if you would release her on her own recognizance.
But, Lois Lane is a murder suspect. I mean, we can't very well have her just walking around free as a jaybird.
I'll give you my personal guarantee that she won't try to skip town. How's that?
Yeah, but...
You do trust me, don't you, Mr. Clemens?
She's all yours, Superman. Welcome to my team.
All right, so we have next to nada in the investigation.
Yeah, for this one, yeah. So basically, the only thing that was really different was when Lois was in jail, the head, that matron lady, she comes up and says, "There's a phone call for you, Lois. It's your mother." And Lois replies, "Could you tell her I'm in solitary confinement?" It was good.
Wow.
Makes sense, because, you know, she doesn't want to deal with her mother at a time like this, because, you know, her mother would be like, "Why do you know what's going on? Oh, my God." You know.
Oh, well, there you go. Short but sweet.
Yep.
This is ludicrous. I never even left the house.
Yeah, but Lois, even I thought it was you until you walked right through me. It must have been some kind of a hologram or something, but it was not like anything I have ever seen before.
Are you sure there's nobody who can vouch for you? A mailman, anybody?
No one. I was all by myself. So here I am, back in jail, waiting for the grand jury to decide my fate.
Do you have any idea who might be after you?
All I know is whoever it is has gone to a lot of trouble.
Well, it's all just circumstantial evidence, right? I mean, Lois is innocent. Isn't that the most important thing?
It should be.
It will be. The hearing's over already?
Yes.
Well, that was fast. Not too fast. I mean, that's a positive sign.
Sometimes, but not today. I'm afraid you're being bound over for trial, Lois. On one count of harassment with deadly intent, and one count of murder in the first degree.
All right, so let's get into our main story. And the lead here, revenge on the reporter.
Dun, dun, dun.
And as I mentioned, yes, this is a two-parter, and we're probably not going to resolve some of the stuff that we learned in this episode until next week.
Exactly.
Okay. We kick it off, Lois and Clark decorating their new place. She gets a call from an old source, Elroy Sykes. Have we seen this guy before in the show? No.
Nope. This is another wedding destroyer type person.
Not knowing what happens next week, this whole thing, there's this guy, and he wants to lure Lois to the park and then frame her. But Sykes thinks it's like for assault or something like that.
Yes,
like, get it riled up
exactly.
and it'll make it look like she hit me or something, and then we can sue her.
Right.
But really, he's like rigged this gun to go off in Lois's hands and kill Sykes.
Now, and the guy he's talking to, like, where'd you get his name from? Because I only picked up Professor. That's the only thing I got from this episode.
Well, I wrote it in here because, you know, I looked it up online.
Oh, okay.
So I got his full name. But yeah, in this episode, we don't learn what his full name is.
Right, because they're just like, Professor.
Yeah, so it's always the professor. But if everybody must know, this guy is Professor Jefferson Cole. So he sets Lois up for murder, which, I mean, it's convenient, right? She's got the gun in her hand.
Right.
She's got the gun pointed at Sykes. The gun goes off by remote.
Yes.
And it manages to shoot him in a place that kills him.
Yes.
What if she just slightly had it off to the right or something when it went off?
Exactly.
It would have completely missed him, and there would be no story. But again, plot device.
Exactly.
The gun goes off. Sykes is dead. Lois is arrested for murder. And it seems that the DA, Michael Clemens, is gung-ho about getting Lois on trial for murder.
Right, because he's up for re-election, so he needs the votes.
So he's just like, hey, she's a well-respected figure, but she can't get away with murder because of that.
Exactly.
And we start to learn a bit more about Professor
Yes.
Cole. I don't know. He just, like, we don't know his motivations. We just know he's got something against Lois. So he's setting her up. And he's got this assistant named Walcott.
Who looks like a, what's that guy's name from Grey's Anatomy? Who's Dr. Dreamy?
All right, yeah.
He looks like a poor man's Dr. Dreamy.
I was going to say
he?
poor man's
You know?
Quinn Mallory, really. This is the mid-90s.
There you go.
He's got the hair, you know, the bangs going on. But yeah, I don't understand that guy's motivations either.
Exactly.
He
It's
just
like
works
this
for the professor doing evil stuff.
I mean, it's obvious the professor is doing bad, illegal stuff, but this kid, his student, wants to go along with it. Why? Like, what are you going to get out of this? I mean, maybe we'll find out. I don't think we will.
I know.
He's
You're not going
just
to
a
get extra
henchman.
credit. This has got nothing to do with school.
Exactly.
But he has helped the professor build this device that he says he planned while he was in prison.
Yes.
Called the hallucinator. And
Yes.
pretty much it just makes people say things.
This hallucinator, okay? I had to go back and make sure that's what they said. Because, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's a hologram, okay? I don't get why they had to go this route that it's a hallucination, that it targets your the cerebral cortex, it said, or something like that, that it makes you hallucinate. It makes you think you're seeing things, but you're not actually seeing it. If it's a hallucination, well, I guess we'll get into that later on when Superman talks about it at the trial, I guess. But let's talk about it here. So the hallucination thing. He makes the butterflies, and the professor can see him, Walt can see him, fine, all right? Later on, they make the hallucination of Lois walking with a gun, and they target everyone in the whole street area with this device, so that they all see Lois walking with a gun towards a woman, which is fine. But if you wanted actual proof that she was there, if someone took a picture, then they wouldn't have a picture of Lois with a gun walking towards the woman because it's a hallucination. It was only in their minds.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Why didn't they just go with the hologram? We've had a hologram in Lois and Clark before. It could easily be, that seems a lot easier to make a hologram than to make something that targets your mind to think you're seeing something. I don't know, in my opinion. Anyway.
Yeah, it does seem like it would be an easy fix, where they're just like, hey, there's this person who had a camera, or this person who had a, home video camera or something from a shop or something.
Yeah, this is this is the big thing that made me think, oh, plot device, which is why I'm going to use that, for my intro. That's why I came up with that, because I was like, this is just why a hallucination thing? Why not just make it a hologram?
Yeah,
it's so much simpler.
Exactly,
so much simpler.
And of course, Clark, and by extension Superman, knows that she's not guilty.
Right? Yeah.
But they have this whole conversation about we can't break you out. I stand for truth, justice, and the American way. And you're like, oh, I get it. Nice little tie back in. But she's not guilty. Is it really that bad to break her out of prison? She didn't do it. So they come up with this whole convoluted thing about how Superman's tricks the DA into being you have to let Lois Lane out because she's the only one who can investigate this with me. And that's when the whole people seeing her with the gun thing happens. And again, Superman, she walks right through him like a hologram.
Yes.
He flies straight back to the apartment where she's still there by herself.
Yes. Exactly.
She didn't do it.
Exactly.
So just break her out of prison already.
Right.
There's no reason for her to be going through this.
Yeah, they were talking about that in the back issues. So we'll have a little bit more about what people thought about that when we get to the back issues part. But it's she's not guilty. And again, this is where I said plot device, It's the police come right away to the apartment, to arrest her, and Clark is there, I mean, he could have stayed in character as Superman, and when they came to the door, say, no, I just saw that Lois over there with a gun. I flew right over here. She's here.
Yeah.
They could have stopped it right there. It could be like, I'm her alibi. There's no way she could have gotten from that alley back here in that amount of time as fast as I can fly.
Exactly. Later on, when he has to testify in court, they don't even make him swear in. The judge is I think Superman's word is beyond reproach. We don't have to swear him in. We can skip all this. Superman, say your piece, and we'll believe you.
Yes.
So you're right.
I
He
know.
could have just said that. Not to mention that the police just show up at the apartment. Like, how'd they know just to find her right there?
Exactly.
She was just up the street with a gun.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
Anyway, they go through the motions. You know, all this,
Yeah.
you know, we're going to trial. Martha and Jonathan are in town. You know, that's what leaves Lois alone so they can use the hallucinator. Superman doesn't get fooled by any of this. The whole thing about Lois with a gun was because they'd also paid a woman to videotape it.
Yes.
So that was the woman that she was, like, supposedly attacking.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Which I was like,
And yeah,
she's in on the plot?
She's
Okay.
she's in on it. I rewatched the beginning where she first shows up, and there is a kid on a skateboard going by that she's videotaping, but if you watch her, they go to great lengths to show her looking over her shoulder at Sykes and Lois and even centering the camera on them. So, like, the boy on the skateboard goes by, but then she turns and she's looking and aiming it directly at that. And, like, why would you do that if you weren't, you know, actually going to videotape your son?
Well, I was watching. I was just like, I thought that was just, you know, a happy coincidence or something like that.
Yeah,
Like this woman
yeah.
caught it on
No.
tape as well. So let's get this all
Yeah.
plot together. But no, she's actually in on it.
Yeah, I believe she's in on it.
Cole, like, sends evidence and everything to the DA to make sure that, like, Lois is definitely going on. There's this whole thing where they go back to the crime scene, Lois and Clark.
Yeah.
And it's this... They've done this a couple of times throughout the series, where Clark immediately finds evidence that the police missed. Like, they're like, the police combed this place and they didn't find the gun casing. And he looks around for like 2 seconds, uses his, like, enhanced vision, bang.
Yep.
But it's like right there in a grate. He's like, well, if, you know, if the police weren't so incompetent, they could have found that. Like, it was right there.
Well, I'll give them some props because he does have that X-ray vision, so he could, like, you know, presumably he has control over it, that he can, like, zone out certain things. So I'm sure maybe he just set it on, like, metal only scan, you know, and it's like, oh, there it is, you know.
Well, and this serves to sort of just make things seem a bit more suspect as well, because they're like, well, if she didn't actually fire it, then the firing pin thing imprints would be different or something. So they have to get rid of that. You know, the DA is convinced that he should get rid of that or he will not get a conviction. Everything just looks really suspect now.
Yeah, definitely.
Missing evidence is not a good thing. And the plan moves forward. Superman gives, you know, a testimony, but he has to take off really quickly because of this fake meteorite hurtling towards London.
And see, there again, plot device. How is this little device that they made powerful enough to cause a hallucination of all of freaking London, okay, across seas? Walcott is not over there, you know, with the device causing this to happen.
Yeah, who set it up?
Yeah, exactly. Because Walcott's not there. He's not there to set it up. He's here. So it's like, if they had just made it a hologram thing, they could have, you know, done it just would have made more sense, I think. I'm still, if they wanted to do it over, you know, do a hologram in England, someone would have to be there, I assume. But I don't know. I just think it would take less power, you know, and make a little more sense if it was a hologram, not a hallucination. Because you're trying to make all of London believe that there is you know, it's a mass hallucination of an asteroid. No. Sorry.
Blofeld's in on it.
I'm sorry, Robert. No, Grant Rosenberg. No, that's no. Just no.
Yeah. And the whole purpose for doing this was because they've kidnapped Perry, and they're going to send a hallucination of Perry in to testify as a character witness for Lois. But instead they make him go like, no, she totally was holding a grudge against Sykes, and she said she was going to get even with him.
Yep.
As if to say, like, nobody else was going to get up and call fake on this.
Right.
Except Superman. Like, Superman would be the only one who would run up and go, this is a hallucination, and then prove it. So, whatever. Completely beaten down. Lois just loses faith in the justice system, and she's found guilty. Hurled off to prison. To be continued.
Yes.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah, I remember I was watching it, and, like, I didn't remember about this episode, and I was like, I looked at the time, and I'm like, there's only a couple minutes left. They're going to wrap this up quickly, which is, you know, that's what happens in Lois and Clark. Yeah. But then I was like, oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. And then there it was, to be continued.
Oh, what can you do? Oh, well, some bylines. I did like the whole thing with Clark having to wallpaper the apartment. Like, Lois is tells him not to do it with super speed.
Oh, yeah.
And then as soon as she's gone, he does it with super speed. And then later on, he's just like, take your mind off stuff. You know, I wallpapered the whole apartment with super speed. You can just have a go at me for a while. Take your mind off
Exactly. Yell at me. That was pretty good. That was nice. And speaking of that scene, there apparently a little Easter egg here has informed you about something.
I've been pronouncing it wrong this whole time. Even the name pronouncer was wrong. It's not Scrigia. In this scene, they dropped the name in a news broadcast on the radio or something about a football game. It's pronounced Secretia.
Right. Yep. Yep.
Oh man.
Well,
Don't I feel I've got egg on my face.
Better late than ever.
So listen for it next time. I'm very sorry, Philip Secretia. What about Lois doing sit-ups? She can apparently do like 2,000 sit-ups.
Yeah, was she really doing 2,000, or was she just saying that? You know how you do
she got to like
1,000
when she did there, and then she cheated. So she can at least do 1,000.
Right. I think she was cheating the whole time. I'm just saying. I don't know. I've never seen her abs, but maybe, I don't know, maybe they are incredible. I mean, after all, she was in Seinfeld, and we know other parts of her are incredible.
Yeah. Real and spectacular, right?
Yeah, spectacular. That's right. That's the word.
Oh, yeah. Also, we get a drop line about Batman.
Yes.
The Cape Crusader.
He apparently exists in the Lois and Clark universe, because that's what Superman says. He says, "Oh, you're thinking Batman." Because they call him the Cape Crusader, and I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool. They've referenced Gotham before, right?
Yeah.
They said they've referenced Gotham, so apparently Batman does exist. Of course, they never bring him in there because of rights and whatnot. I think he was tied up in movies and stuff like that. I wonder, like if there was any plan to even bring on someone like a Bruce Wayne just as a cameo, just to say, hey, here he is.
Yeah, you're right. It's probably a rights issue. Later with Smallville, they did bring in Green Arrow and Flash, and now of course they all have their own TV shows. So yeah, probably a rights issue, but little name drop just for the fans. Why not? I liked it.
Exactly. Yeah.
But all in all, I think these were two pretty good episodes. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this one wraps up.
Yeah, I like the first one better than the second one, but I'll wait until we see the conclusion and see how it all plays out.
Hard to judge it, right?
Yeah.
How would you characterize your relationship with Lois Lane?
We're friends.
Good friends?
I'm not sure what you're getting at.
Well, she's married to your close friend Clark Kent, isn't she?
Yes.
So would you say you're as close to her as you are to him?
I'd say that would be fair.
In fact, you've saved her life on more than one occasion, isn't that right?
Yes.
Is that what you're trying to do now, Superman? Isn't it true? You'd do anything to save Lois Lane's life?
Yes, but...
even at the expense of justice.
Objection. He's leading the witness.
Isn't it true that you're more than just good friends with Lois Lane? Isn't it true, I dare say, that you might even love Lois Lane?
Your Honor.
I repeat the question. Do you love Lois Lane, Superman?
I can say, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Clark Kent loves Lois Lane. And I respect that love, just like I respect the truth. And my job is to uphold the truth. And that is what I would do anything for.
All right, well, let's check out some back issues.
All right, so with this issue, the second one here, a lot of people didn't like that Superman would even consider breaking Lois out because he should be morally superior, They said Batman might do something like that, because it's the right thing to do because he's not guilty. But like Superman, should be above that and follow the law, the way the law is set up, because that's the way, that's how he's always done. He doesn't judge the criminals. He captures them, gives them to the police, and lets them take care of that part. So they didn't like that he was considering breaking her out. And they said if Superman can break someone out, that could influence kids watching the show to think, oh, well, if Superman can do something like that, I can do something like that too. It's okay, So they extrapolated quite a bit. They had a lot of arguments back and forth about this, about why it was okay, why it wasn't okay. Pretty much like what we said. She is innocent. Why doesn't he? But, they had reasons. Going along with that, people were like, well, truthfully, this would probably be tried as second-degree murder. The video doesn't show the finger on the trigger. It's Lois's first time. There's no prior convictions. Case should have been thrown out. It's not realistic court drama. And then, like what we said about how Superman could have flown home real quick, to see Lois was there and been her alibi. They had that same idea back when this aired, 96, the fans. They're like, well, why didn't he just fly home, and say to the police, no, she's here. I'll be her alibi. So yeah, they're thinking along the same lines as us. They really wish that Richard Belzer had been recast as Henderson. Remember Henderson back in series 1, season 1? Yeah, they said they wish they had had him back, or at least recast his character, because the DA was kind of acting like a policeman the way he came out so strongly. Like they thought it would have been better coming from a policeman, police chief, or an inspector. More truthful, I guess, to real life.
And the DA was a bit of a weak character.
Yeah, he was. They said that several times, and I noticed it too, the slow motion bits in this episode did not look so great. They said it looked like slow motion you might use in a music video. So I don't know if you noticed that when Perry was going to get attacked in the elevator, they had the slow motion bit there, and it was weird looking. It was a little weird looking. But they did like the villain. They thought his little quirk, of like memo to self,
Make lemons into lemonade.
Exactly. They liked that. They thought that was a neat little quirk that he had. It was much better than the quirk of Bob Fences and his action figure playing. Said, much better. It's well done.
Yeah, I enjoyed that too.
And then someone else said, it just takes a few good episodes like this to restore their faith in the show. Which is, like we said, these are not bad episodes. These are, definitely better than the Wedding Destroyer, for sure. Yeah. And then someone said they really liked the way Clark super speeds down into the sewer and speeds right back up just as the grate starts to fall just a little bit. It was like a nice touch, It's like a little bit of detail there. Again, we appreciate the little details, because you can see the grate just start to fall just the tiniest bit. So for Brutal Youth, they said this was really good. It was a realistic villain, like he wants to kill Jimmy, so there's no witnesses. Instead of just leave him alive, like why leave him alive? We don't want, it's a realistic villain. Kill him. He's a witness. We don't want, we're not walking around.
Yeah. They
said the doctor was believable in her hatred of being scorned for a younger woman, so it makes sense that she would try to become a younger woman herself. Jimmy's acting was, really good. Like he's come a long way as well, since his first debut. They loved Dean and Terry on the steps when they were talking about, when she reveals to him about the molecular structure. They thought they both did a great job, and they're dealing with real problems that couple deal with now. They're dealing with aging, their relationship. So they thought it was great, and it feels, and like I can agree with this. They said it feels like a return to the roots for the show. There's a little bit of humor. There's a lot of romance. It was well done. They said, and I agree. I liked it. I liked the episode.
It's like I said, best part of the episode for sure.
And so now we come to that part. This was a huge thing, where they were arguing about how Lois was on the ceiling. Okay, so they talked a lot about stuff from the comics, stuff from the movies. And they were talking about how in Superman the movie, if you remember Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder, Superman takes her flying and he's holding their hand, and she's flying with him until she loses her grip on him and she starts to fall. But then he grabs her again, her hand, and she starts flying again. And then they talk about the comics, about how things in the comics have happened like this as well. And they come to the conclusion, although people were against it as well, that Superman has some kind of tactile telekinesis. And this kind of like, I looked into it a little bit, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I never thought about that. Tactile telekinesis, which gives him the ability, that's why he can fly. Because he's using telekinesis. He doesn't know he has it. He just knows he wills himself to fly, and he flies. So there was that whole thing about the aura that surrounds Superman. They basically say when he is touching an object, he can extend that aura out to that object, which is why when he goes to stop a plane from falling, it doesn't just crack in half because of because it's so heavy and he's just pushing at one point. They say it's the tactile telekinesis that sort of like keeps that plane intact so he can actually lower it. And they point to a couple things in the early comics from the 1980s when John Byrne rebooted it, which led to Lois and Clark. They point to a couple passages that sort of lead to that thinking that that's what's going on. He's lifting something huge, and he says something like, I don't know, it felt like as I started flying with this huge object, it got lighter, almost as if I wasn't using my strength to lift it. So I think they were trying to go that way, saying that it was some kind of telekinesis. He's using his willpower to move it instead of his actual strength. So if we apply that to Lois and Clark, if that is how his powers work with telekinesis, then just by simply touching her, he could sort of suspend her on the ceiling and the sheets as well. So it's a bit out there, but it is something that could be. I've never thought about it before like that, but it is interesting to think about. That's how his flight works. It's a simple form of telekinesis.
Sure. Why not? I'll go with it.
They came to the conclusion here in the back issues. They said, well, you know what? Whatever it is, it just looked good.
I respectfully disagree.
Yeah. There was one other thing I forgot to put in here. Apparently, there was a lot of talk during this episode on these forums about a story that came out, I guess, in 1969, an essay that Larry Niven, Larry Niven, the author, he wrote a essay called "Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex," and it was being referenced a lot during these discussions. And apparently, you could find it online for free. It's just an essay that he wrote, and it's about the problems that Superman would face in sexual intercourse with a human woman. And he apparently goes into great detail about the control Superman would have over his powers during sexual intercourse. He theorizes on the superpowers of Superman's sperm cells, as well as the genetic compatibility between humans and Kryptonians, and the dangers to a woman while she is gestating with Superman's baby. So, if you're interested in more about, that, look up Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex. And a lot of people seem to oh, don't reference that. It's so ridiculous. It seems like something that a true fanboy would enjoy debating. I don't know if you've ever seen Mallrats, but, Brody and Mallrats would love this this essay.
Nice. Maybe we'll find a link somewhere and post it on the Facebook page.
Yes.
All right, so next issue, we will be discussing Dead Lois Walking, the wrap-up to this two-parter, and then Bob and Carol and Lois and Clark.
So we know Dead Lois Walking, conclusion.
Yeah.
She'll be found innocent somehow,
Probably.
Professor Cole will be taken to prison.
Yeah, we'll get his full motivations, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. At least we hope we get his full motivations. You never know. And then we've got, so the Bob and Carol and Lois and Clark. From what I remember, this is like where they find a couple that is like very similar to them, so they like hanging out with them.
Right.
But I'm pretty sure, even if I didn't see the episode, I'm pretty sure
bad guys.
sure there's something about them that's not, not all right. Anyway, whatever it is, we will find out next week, because that is it for this issue of the Rewatch Podcast. Keep up with listener interaction by liking our Facebook page at facebook.com/Rewatch Podcast or facebook.com/Lois and Clark Rewatch. Don't forget, you can follow the show on Twitter at Rewatch Pod or visit our webpage at rewatchpodcast.podomac.com, which has links to some of our favorite sites there, such as zoomway.net, the folc.wiki.com, and the supermanhomepage.com, plus links to our archive of film rewatch episodes.
And as always, you can write us an email or record a voice message and send it to the rewatchpodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you've enjoyed the show, please consider giving us a rate and review on iTunes. And if you really want to go above and beyond, you can help support the Rewatch Podcast by heading over to patreon.com/rewatchpodcast and make a monthly contribution as little as $1. And of course, our entire back catalogue is on YouTube, so you can search Rewatch Podcast and subscribe today. All right, well, thank you for joining me again, Tom. And I will just say, until next time, there's a pile-up in Piccadilly Circus. We need your help.
We gotta fly.
The Rewatch Podcast is not associated with Warner Brothers Television, ABC, Gangbuster Films Incorporated, or Roundelay Productions.
Don't believe everything you see on TV.
The use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, or educational purposes as provided in United States Code Title 17, aka Fair Use.
Let's get legal on this.
Music provided by Kevin McCloud at incompetech.com.
Great shades of Elvis.
Copyright 2017, The Rewatch Podcast.
Where are your beepers? We'll be in touch.